A 29-year-old traditional leader in Nqakayi, location in the Eastern Cape, is expected to appear in court on Monday after a video of him assaulting two elderly women went viral online. Now, the man, who is a headman at the Tsholora Administrative Area under the Gcaleka Ncihana Traditional Council in Willowvale, has since been placed on precautionary suspension by the COGTA in the province. Now, let's discuss this with the former Deputy Minister of Social Development, Dr. Hendrietta Bogopane-Zulu. Welcome to Newzroom Afrika, and thank you so much for your time.
Well, good morning, Masechaba, and good morning, South Africa.
Can you start by sharing your perspective on this particular incident and how it reflects on the state of gender-based violence in the country?
For me, I think let's start first to say that it's important that South Africans understand that every laws, whatever you call it, is in place for the protection. So the prosecution of this traditional leader has to set that record straight, because from the UN, you've got the 15th of June earmarked as the International Day for Elderly Abuse Awareness. So there's a recognition internationally that older persons are being abused. You come to Africa, the African Protocol on Older Persons, you have to Article 8 that specifically talks about the protection of older persons, in particular women, from accusations of witchcraft to harassment to the list is endless. So the African continent as a whole. Then you've got our own legislations as South Africa that protects the rights and dignity of older persons. And we then come to traditional leadership. Traditional leaders, we're investing a lot of money, even now as the foundation. We started the Rock Leadership precisely for what has happened, the prevention of what has happened now, where we trained the 8,880 traditional leaders registered with COGTA on violence against women, child offense, everything to do with social behavior. Assisted by Penorica, for an example, they give us chairs, tables, tents for the very traditional leaders to be able to go into their communities, Masechaba, and raise with their subjects elderly abuse, disability, hiding, all of these things. Now you have a 29-year-old abusing an 80-year-old. But then you have South Africa standing there and watching, taking videos. But then you have a woman that stands up that also gets beaten. It's like we've been talking about this thing, Masechaba, in every platform. If it's not them being beaten for their grants, it is them being raped, it is them being assaulted. What breaks my heart is that you can say, okay, wena, kumkani, whatever, headman, you are there to protect your subjects. But he's well known for violence.
Oh, he's well known for violence?
Yeah.
Now, there have been growing calls for him to resign. Is that enough?
You see, we need to understand the structure of traditional leadership. It starts at COGTA, so the issue of resignation would not just happen. He needs to, like now he's put on suspension, right? But that is a position that you are born into. So the only way is for government to suspend and remove him and withdraw his certificate. And that, for me, would be the most achievement. So that traditional leaders begin to take their own subject into consideration. So the biggest punishment, over and above him being jailed and all of that, I call on COGTA to withdraw his certificate. He is not worthy of that position at all.
Problematic for me is how African culture has been implicated in the rates of gender-based violence and femicide that we see in South Africa today, right? But no one is telling the story of our history as a people, as Africans. that there was a point in time before we were colonized when women were matriarchs. If a woman was to stand in front of a man, that man, in a war, that man was not to be touched.
Yeah. That is, hence we say to the slogan, you know, African men never abused. African men knew and understood that you can never raise your hand to a woman. Where it's changed, that is the question we still need to answer. But it's a simple question. To what extent have we moved away as Africans from our value system? You know, to what extent are we instilling? I mean, he's 29. So he's literally was born into the democracy. Now you ask yourself, is it okay that we back, because it takes us back to saying South African men are violent. And that I can say without fear or favor because I work with men. South African men are violent, and blaming them is not going to assist us much because we need to begin to work with them to get the violence. He says he beat her up because she bewitched his father. Now, in 1996, for example, South Africa hosted a conference that looked at witchcraft and older persons. And that has been the cycle. If you remember, 2 years ago, in a whole village, older women were killed in the Eastern Cape. So you take Eastern Cape, you put KZN next to it, and now you add Limpopo. These three provinces has the highest prevalence of elderly abuse. But it's also the provinces that are very strict in terms of culture. AmaZulu and their culture, you cannot really separate that. They are a very cultural nation. You have AmaXhosa, same thing. And then you've got the different tribes, Limpopo. Where does this violence come from?
And where does it end?
It never ends.
Which leads me to my next question, and that what measures do you think can be taken to prevent such incidences from taking place in the future?
There's 3 or 4 things that are very important. The first one is awareness. The campaigns of awareness and what really constitutes elderly abuse must be sustained. It has to fit into the 365 days of no violence against women. With a special focus, the same way we focus on the girl child, let us focus on the 60 plus, because this is a 60 plus matter. And we don't have a lot of programs that look into the 60 plus. The second one is that we need to honor the elderly. I mean, at 80, still walking that long distance. Valuing and honoring them would be something like, let's have the clubs, like we've got the Elder Persons Champion Clubs. We've got the Elderly Person Luncheon Clubs. With that, we need to multiply, because that helps them to come out of the house, to be taught how to protect themselves. What happens in a violent, like that, what do you do, and all of that we do. But above all, we need to begin to get older persons to speak more without fear. So we need to remove, these whole positions. When you get 60, you are an elder, and the titles like Khosi, whoever, Chief Mamang, he needs to be, the higher the post you hold, whether you are employed, unemployed, it's your mom, it's your auntie, we need to begin to isolate, name and shame those that are involved in elderly abuse. We need to begin to have a system, a monitoring system where videos such as these are deposited. And that is one of the things that the Dr. Hendrietta Bogopane-Zulu Foundation is actually working on. We're working on documenting even the ones, Masechaba, that did not make it to Newzroom Afrika. We are beginning to put together that, as I said, funded by Penorica, is a system. Once we have this depository, when a day like June 15 comes, the International Day, we are able to remind South Africa to say, remember their names. And that is what we are planning to do, is the 15th of June, we are going to be showing and reminding South Africa through actually a short documentary.
All right. And before I let you go, very briefly, are there any plans to engage with traditional leaders, communities, to raise awareness about gender-based violence and promote positive change?
I do that for a living.
I love that.
I do that for a living through the Rock Leadership. And I go to every corner of South Africa. We have a signed memorandum of understanding with the National House of Traditional Leaders. I don't only support them in training, I support them in a whole lot of things. From them when they are addicted to drugs, when they are alcoholics, getting them treatment, family restoration, care and support, those living with HIV, anger management. So yes, I did that at social development and I'm continuing to do that. And the partnership with all the provincial houses, local houses, and national houses of traditional leaders, we do that for a living.
All right, Doctor, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you very much for having us.
All right. Okay, so that was Dr. Hendrietta Bogopane-Zulu, former Social Development Deputy Minister.